The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
All right, we've got a podcast. We've got a podcast for you tonight or today or whenever this is getting released. I'm Ed Hand, and I'm joined today by Hogdale on episode 218 of the Pesky Report, continuing our tour around other teams that are not the Red Sox in the majors. Today, it's our Orioles episode, and I'm joined by Eric Birdland, aka Eric Garfield of Florida Podcast Pod. Is that correct, or do you say it as like FL Podcast Prospect Pod?
Oh, we don't care. It's not important. As long as people know where to find the highlights and where to find the videos. We call it Florida Prospect Report, but you guys are my boys. You can call it whatever you want.
Okay, we're gonna call it the super awesome Orioles Prospect podcast because I'm affiliated with Sox Prospects. I do their social media, but there aren't that many prospect podcasts for other teams. It's always, for me, it's a much richer canvas of baseball than just focusing on Major League Baseball. And the Orioles, I mean, come on, they've got one of the absolute best minor league systems right now, and we're really seeing the fruits of that in 2022, and we're about to see it more in 2023. And we're gonna touch on that a lot. But this is a Red Sox podcast first and foremost, so I am gonna ask you a couple of Red Sox questions right now. Now I've been following you for a while now on Twitter because you get a lot of the Florida Complex League stuff. Now, how did you start getting into that earliest level of the minors baseball? How did you start following that?
Great question. Thanks for asking. In 2019, I'm a big bicycle rider, a cyclist. So in 2019, I got into an accident, and I was kind of like stuck at home. The only thing I could do in the initial parts of my recovery was walking. So where I lived in Sarasota was about an eighth of a mile away from the stadium. So my walks went to the stadium. I did not even know that they were doing this, but they were playing rookie league games. The first day I went in, I saw second round draft pick Gunnar Henderson, first overall pick Adley Rutschman, a lot of the 2019 draft class that became like the stars of the system today. And I was hooked. Once I saw that team and how they played and that early part of learning, I went back every single day. They invited me to their practices, and I have not stopped since 2019. In fact, today I just spent home from a minor league practice to get home in time to talk with you guys. So that's where it all started.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you doing that. Did you grow up an Orioles fan?
Oh, huge. I'm from Baltimore. I moved to Sarasota in 2014. Ironically, the Orioles were the best team in the sport. That year was really kind of weird and very out of nowhere. But yeah, I'm a Baltimore, even though I've taken up residence in Florida.
Are you from like Baltimore proper or like the area there? Because my dad lived in Frederick for a bit, and I spent some time like closer to on the other side of the Chesapeake and at Washington College.
Okay, Frederick is extremely beautiful. I absolutely love it, and I miss the fact that they had a minor league baseball team.
Frederick Keys, baby.
Right, best stadium, best food, best beer. I'm from Baltimore County, so it's like my town is called Reisterstown. It's a northwest suburb of Baltimore, so about 12 to 16 miles from the city.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, the Frederick Keys were awesome. I was very disappointed to learn that they're not affiliated with a major league team anymore. I remember seeing God, I think it was 1999. I remember seeing Jason Worth and Shone Figgins both play there. And I don't remember if they were on the Baltimore team or they were on the visiting team, but they had a pitching prospect named Matt Riley. And Matt Riley karate chopped a board in half midway through the fifth inning or something. And it was like the most amazing minor league mid-inning thing I had seen as like a 9-year-old.
If you want to have a good conversation with an Orioles fan, don't mention Matt Riley. But yeah, that's a name that I certainly remember. He was a prospect that did not deliver on his promise, but he showed some pretty good stuff. Good memory.
Yeah, good karate chop too. You know, you don't forget when somebody splits a board in half like that. You don't just forget that. But yeah. So I started following you though. Initially, you tweeted about Miguel Blaze on the Red, who is now very quickly rising through the ranks of prospects with the Red Sox. He's been on a bunch of top 100 lists, and he's hasn't played a single game above the Florida Complex League. But there were not a lot of highlights from him. Like some rumors were starting to spread, like, hey, this kid can hit. But you posted the first video of him that I actually saw, and I think he was hitting a double or something like that. And it was just like, oh wow, this guy's got access to this stuff. So what has been your read on him so far? Like, are the rumors true?
Well, I believe the rumors are true. I kind of played a role in helping start them. I'm gonna say, I know this is a weird. I watch prospects and I watch practice more than I watch games. I think Blyce was at worst the second best baseball player I saw last season, regardless of age. His skill level is immense. His baseball ability is truly through the roof. He's a ceilingless athlete, and then you have the speed and the way that he can use it in the outfield to cover ground, and on that double to just absolutely explode out of the box like a true track athlete. He's faster than fast baseball players, and he's better than good baseball players. So, I get hype about a lot of prospects. I think the only guy who compares to him at that age level and really overall is the Rays' Junior Caminero, and he's a very different type of player. He's a power extra base hits guy. But Blyce has it all. This is me talking. I would be very surprised if he's not eventually the number one prospect.
And I don't think the Red Sox have had that since Yoan Moncada. So this is somebody that's seen number one prospects in baseball. You have gotten to see them up close, which we're going to get into in a minute. But a couple of ex-Red Sox are in the Orioles organization now. What's the early outlook on the pitchers there in Darwinzon Hernandez and AJ Politi, who we actually had on the podcast a couple months ago?
Okay, Politi, I've gotten several looks at him before the games, just camp, live BPs, and warming up and mound sessions. And he was getting just assaulted by every level of hitter, like major league veterans, minor league guys. You could see the sliders start to move, but the spin was not strong. So the movement away from bat paths was not happening. It was actually staying in the bat path. You could see the slider, but it wouldn't bite. It wouldn't break the way it's supposed to. Now the games have started, totally different. My opinion of Politi is now, I think the Orioles are going to find a way to keep him on the roster and utilize him as a weapon. I want to say 9 outs in spring training. 5 of the 9 have been strikeouts. His whip is around a half or 0.5 or 0.6 or something like that. So I don't know if he's spectacular, but lefty with movement like that can frustrate hitters. I'm gonna think, or pardon me, he's not a lefty, but I'm gonna think that the Orioles find a way to utilize him and make him like a regular rotation player, like in their pen. Darwinzon is a little bit different. He's the one that is lefty.
Yeah.
In camp, he was hitting his spots. He was fooling people. He was getting a lot of swings and misses, especially from younger minor leaguers. Now that the games have started, it hasn't been the same. I've only seen him, I think, one appearance in my 7 spring training games, or maybe 2, but not getting outs, not hitting his spots. So it's hard for me to give like a complete answer on him. I know that, he hasn't been exactly consistent, but he wasn't horrible for you guys. So maybe I guess I'm hoping he can get to that level for the O's.
It depends on the year. He was, he had, last year, he was very bad. Like,
it was bad.
Very bad last year. But 2 years ago, he was fairly serviceable as like a second lefty option. And he's always just kind of like, it's one of those like, man, this guy's stuff is electric. He has no idea where it's going. And, that gets you into trouble.
He has absolutely no clue where any of his pitches are going. It's kind of funny when you think about it. I mean, if there's any bullpen player on the Sox last 2 years who have directly influenced my propensity for self-harm, it'd be Darwin's and Hernandez on the top of that list. He's so stressful. You cannot take a second to relax when he's up there pitching because you just have no idea what's going to happen.
Thank you guys both for the preview. So we'll see. I guess we'll see what happens if he makes the squad.
Yeah, no, Pelini is a different story there though. He's like I can very easily see him being a successful middle reliever. He knows how to pitch, and it's like that like pitchability. I think it's kind of a hard thing to like put a metric on, but. Just seeing him in AAA as much as I did, he was the only of their relievers that like had major league stuff that finished the season there. It was kind of like when I saw that he wasn't going to be on the 40 man, it was like, okay, someone's taking him.
And you were right. I think maybe the appeal that he'll have as the season goes on, the Orioles starters are really kind of like fireballers, all of them, 95, 96, all the way up to 98, even Bradish. So him coming in after them, slider cutter, a little bit slower, could provide that frustrating contrast for hitters. So I know it's kind of like an if type of thing in an ideal circumstance, but right, the Orioles, they draft well, they develop well, they even Rule 5 select well. So it's all very shocking to me, but now that I've seen him in games against opponents wearing uniforms, not Orioles minor leaguers, I get the keeper feel from Pelini.
Yeah, it's like something clicked with the rise in competition. But speaking of drafting well, the Red Sox and the Orioles do have one guy in their system that they each drafted, but he didn't go with the Red Sox. They couldn't get him, and that's Jud Fabian, who was then drafted and successfully signed by the Orioles next year. The next year, that's an outfielder with like a lot of power, right?
Yes. Righty outfielder. I've been to minor league camp the last 2 days. He's hit several home runs into the parking lot just in those 2 days, including one that was about 417 feet yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, prospect excitement is my thing, but the more I watch him and his draft mate, Dylan Beavers, the more I see parallels to the upper minors where we have Kerstad and Kauser. So they're not exactly the same type of players, but they're very, very dynamic. To be completely honest, I think Fabian is the best out of all 4 of them. So, and I'm basing that on offense. One thing I talked about with the coach today, we're watching him in a live BP. He hits any type of pitch well. If it's up and moving, if it's like near the dirt and spinning, if it's just a plain heater, he makes contact with the fat part of the bat and sends it 380 feet. It's a lot of effort, but it's he's very early into a professional career. I sense stardom with Jud Fabian, so I'm sorry that you guys didn't get him, but he was a comp B or a comp C So
Yeah.
every team could have had him twice.
Yep.
Thank
And
you.
I believe that the guy the Red Sox got back for that one the next year was Roman Anthony, who looks to be a pretty promising. I forget if it was Roman Anthony or Cutter Coffee, but both are guys that look pretty promising.
I like Roman Anthony a lot. I believe it was him.
Yeah, no, he's up here. So like trade one good prospect outfielder for another. That's fine. Last prospect question, and then we're gonna start hitting the big league stuff. You mentioned this beforehand because I had forgotten the names completely. There are two other prospects in the system. I don't, maybe people remember this, maybe they've chosen to forget, but the 2019 season, the big deadline acquisition was Andrew Cashner from the Orioles. The Red Sox had really used most of their trade collateral building that 2018 pick. They didn't really have any bullets left, and Cashner was, they traded two very low-level prospects at the time to get him. Now, this was 4 years ago. So, can you tell us a little bit about how these two prospects have developed?
Happy to. The two guys traded back for Cashner back then. I think they were 16 and 17 years old. So now they're 20 and 21. Are both righties, outfielder Elio Prado, and both Venezuelan also. Outfielder Elio Prado and middle infielder Noelbert Romero. So early development has gone the way that it usually does. A lot of peaks and a lot of valleys also. Prado has faced injury issues coming up. They both were awesome today. I saw them today. They both reminded me that they really enjoyed their time as Red Sox. They actually like being drafted by them. I know they like where they are right now, but I think Noberth is going to be kind of like maybe a minor league utility player. Prado and his hit tool, he's already gotten stronger and gotten a little bit bigger, and his contact is going further and considerably louder. So maybe he has higher upside. It was the same when the deal went down in 2018. He was really the one in the deal, and that's still true today. So I expect a lot of questions about their development to be answered this season, as they're now of that age where we can kind of like evaluate them and know what they have. So thank you for asking, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to brag about two guys that I've been watching for a while.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. There's so many guys in the system, and like each of them has their own story and their own ability, and it's, I don't know. Like again, that's when I talk about the canvas that is minor league baseball. It's like these two guys that have been there now for a couple of years that I'm sure Red Sox fans, are a complete afterthought. But we see sometimes that these guys that are afterthoughts. Look at Santiago Espinal, traded for Steve Pearce, World Series MVP.
Yep.
Kid made the All-Star team this year.
Yep.
And I'm sure most Red Sox fans didn't realize he was ever in the Red Sox system. But that's, they're all starting somewhere.
Well, you guys have, in my opinion, you guys have a really good system, and you really find international talent like more than you get credit for. So when you're talking about prospect collateral, your execs can go down to the low minors and find guys to deal really every single season, every single population. I really, most fans and most Oriole fans might not feel this way, but the Red Sox, to get guys started and get guys in their system, they do as good a job as any organization in the entire sport. This is something I look at all the time.
I'm glad you said that about the international players also, because I think Eddie Romero, who is the guy that's effectively in charge of that,
Yep.
He's been there through multiple regimes now,
Yep.
and has done such a good job. Like with I mean, they're the household names like the Devers and the Bogarts, but I mean, you look at the system right now with guys like Luis Perales, and just like some of the guys that are coming out of that league at this point, Blaze, obviously, he's so good at his job, and I feel like it's always like Bloom or Dombrowski or Charrington, like, oh, they're the guy who drafted him, but it's a lot of people that go into making these decisions.
Huge.
But no, I definitely appreciate hearing all this minor league stuff. But we do have a couple, and I know that it's not quite as much your forte, but you do know these guys as well as anybody, especially the homegrown ones. So I'm gonna let Hogdale take over for a little bit here, because we were talking about this last night, and he said this was off the top of his head, but I think that he planned out his questions a little better than he's admitting.
Whatever. Yeah, right. First off, just before that, I gotta say, man, I appreciate your opinion much more than Keith Law's. He can suck my ass. Glad I can see someone has taste and has good opinions when it comes to the Red Sox farm system. I appreciate you first and foremost with that. Now, when it comes to like the Orioles major league team, I've been pretty mean to them for the last about month now, because when it comes to the Red Sox, our fans have been crucifying the team's offseason because they didn't do enough. They lost Xander, even though they completely rebuilt the bullpen, added some really good depth options. And I'm like, I look at the Orioles offseason, and I'm like, dude, if I was an Orioles fan after that super fun season, you got all these young guys coming up. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel for all these Orioles fans have been waiting for this rebuild to come to fruition, and you supply them with with Kyle Gibson and Adam Frazier. These are okay players. These are good. Adam Frazier's a good player, but this is your beacon of light of an offseason is Adam Frazier. Come on, man. They deserve more. So I just wanted to know your opinion on that kind of thing.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm 44, so I've been alive since 1978, and I've seen the Orioles through different ownership situations and different objectives. Are we contending? Are we rebuilding? So I guess I should be very frustrated at the lack of fortification of the roster. But Adley Rutschman is the catcher. Gunnar Henderson is the shortstop. Grayson Rodriguez will be the number 1 or number 4, somewhere in the starting rotation. And there will be system players to supplement them as they go on. I'm also kind of the mindset that process is going to cost them a few wins. They won 83 last year. I'm kind of thinking 75, 76 this year. But the kind of progress that is happening beneath the surface means more than the major league winning percentage in this particular season. I understand that most Oriole fans are going to really disagree with me and want a true number 1. Not Kyle Gibson, not an innings eater type like an ace. But that's Grayson. And after him, by this time next year, that'll be DL Hall. And we need to save that potential free agent money to extend our superstars that are not even close to 25 years old, like Adley Rutschman, like Gunnar Henderson. So I certainly understand the frustration of the fan base, but I think excellent things are happening as far as the talent level of the roster because of who was drafted and developed. You just have to be patient.
No, I completely understand what you're going with there, and it's undeniable. The Orioles, in terms of a foundation for a winning formula going into the future, it's undeniable what they have come up through that depth of quality in their system. But what I wanted to see them do was kind of what the Blue Jays did when their young guys first came up. Supplement them with a veteran presence like a George Springer, a dude who's a quality player in a position where maybe your high-end prospects aren't at. Add him in. He can mentor those young guys, has championship experience. It's the same thing kind of like what the Braves did early on with them as well. It kind of they did that in an attempt with Marcell Ozuna. They didn't realize that eventually he'd be a gigantic piece of shit. But
they already had Freddie Freeman at the start of that, though, so he sort of was that veteran leader.
Exactly.
But which makes me wonder, who is the leader on the Orioles right now?
Great question. In 2023 baseball, it's almost always the highest paid dude. I want to say the Orioles' biggest salary for this year is Anthony Santander, maybe 7 and change or 8, somewhere around there. So it's probably not him. I've watched Gunnar Grayson develop. I've watched him in minor league camps. I've watched him in minor league games year after year. He is the team leader. He's the vocal leader, the one that's going to yell in the huddle, yell in the locker room. So he's one, and Adley is the other one. that kind of will talk a little but leads by example. So even like the leadership tier of the Orioles is barely established because of how young they are. So it's real. I mean, Austin Hayes is a front-facing guy. Cedric Mullins is an all-star. They really don't talk a lot. They don't have media appearances. It's not like the locker room where all the reporters go. So that's a great question. I'm going to go with Grayson and Adley as 1 and 1A.
That's interesting with 'cause Hogdale. I don't know if you felt like this, but the way that Tristan Cassis has kind of been being treated with the Red Sox right now, it almost feels like they want him to step into that leadership role for the younger guys. Do you think that that's do you think that a team needs like a young leader, or like is that something that you think is possible, or do you think that it needs to be a veteran that's been around a few times?
I think it needs to be a mixture of both, because you need to have those young guys that have a commanding presence in the room that set an example for the other guys around them. But at the end of the day, in terms of leadership, you want people with that pedigree, like that established reputation, to be able to set an example for those even younger leaders, just to help them with their progression going forward. It's not one of those things where I think you should bring in a guy who's a bum, who's old and a bum. He's eating up a roster spot. The only thing that he does is bring good leadership. That's why I said with the Blue Jays did the perfect example of this by bringing in George Springer, a dude with championship pedigree, a dude with a ton of quality, and a dude who was worth paying. And he wasn't so old that as he aged, that he wouldn't be good enough by the time the kids grew up and were ready to compete, that he'd be done.
I kind of prefer, and it's usually not structured like this, I like it to be the person that's the best baseball player in the group. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. That A. B, I think it's time for this conversation to stop giving credit to the Blue Jays. That's the team that I absolutely hate the most.
Really?
I really don't dislike any team, but the Blue Jays, I'm not going to cuss, but if I was going to cuss, I'd cuss to them and for them and about them. I'll just say F.
I love that. Love that.
No more crediting them. Save that for your next podcast.
That's awesome.
We do have the Blue Jays coming on next week, so that's gonna be interesting.
That's awesome.
Because I gotta agree with you. The Blue Jays kind of frustrate me because I feel like they should be so much better than they are.
They're maddeningly inconsistent for how great they should be.
They can't seal the deal.
Don't develop their prospects all the way through. Kind of spend I don't want to say frivolously, but they have specific questions they need answered with talent, and they'll just get a named player. They love to win the offseason. That's not what I'm about. Draft good guys and take a couple seasons to develop them and let them answer your questions. That's the Blue Jays are anti that, and
and it seems like the Orioles and the Red Sox are a little more open to developing their own players, but also kind of be willing to take one step back to take two steps forward, because, and again, this is 2021 Red Sox were 2 games away from the World Series. 2022, objective disaster. But when you look at how the minor league system developed, they have Brayan Bello now, they have Tristan Cassis, they have Brian Mata and Brandon Walter knocking on the door. They've got some Cedar Rafaela. They've got some guys that are almost ready to contribute at the major league level. And we saw last year with the Orioles how much and I'm not comparing those guys to Gunnar and Adley. That's maybe Cassis is the tier below them, but they're not those two are 2 of the top 2 prospects in all of baseball. At the
franchise players.
Yeah.
Adley might be the best catcher in baseball by the end of the season. He
we
might
were
already
talking
be
about that before. We were raving about Adley.
Adley's insane. So funny.
He is. But you guys need a nucleus, and a lot of observers are like, oh, the Red Sox don't have one. I see it totally differently. Rafaela, Cavadas. I'm not in love with Nick York, but he's something. I definitely love Meyer and Romero. This is a group. Nathan Hickey.
Yeah, Hickey nobody talks about because they don't know what position he's going to play, but he can hit.
These are true projectable baseball athletes. The Red Sox, they don't have like 2. They have closer to 12 to 15. So, I don't want it to sound like a love fest, but these are players that I watch, and I watch them be good.
Let's have a love fest about the guys though that you watched early on. Let's talk about we've been beating around this for too long. Let's talk about Adley.
Okay.
Yeah. When you first saw this kid, your first year going there, what was your projection of him, and how did that change as he grew through the minors?
Well, I thought he was going to be a non-bust as the first overall pick. I guess that was like the floor, and I guess my earlier impressions were, this guy's labeled as a switch hitter. He's an outstanding power hitter lefty, a good contact hitter lefty, kind of empty righty, and he doesn't look like the best athlete behind the plate. That was 2019. Now it's 2023, and I get to games early so I can watch him just put on the equipment and warm up doing drills, getting balls shot at his feet and his ankles. He has improved his lateral ability while squatting. He's probably one of the 5 best human beings on earth at that skill set. So catcher defense is a big part of being a catcher. He's gone from a number 1 draft pick to the true captain and full number 1 organizational priority. I really am actually wondering over the course of his contract, how much are the Orioles going to even catch him, because they want to keep him and want to keep his lower body healthy. So I see him as like a first baseman in the second half of his contract. I've seen him work there. He's awesome. He's awesome at scooping balls. Like, it looks like it's his natural position. And then you take the offense, he's grown, he's matured, he's physically developed, and he's improved his already good skill set. So when you put all those things together, I think we're talking about a guy that's going to be no worse than 5th in MVP voting 3 or 4 times, or maybe even win it. So that's the Orioles' best player, and for the beginning of their winning window, he's the foundation. So I usually don't get super excited about players like that, but I mean, for a catcher, he really has got it all.
So we've got him everybody knows Adley, but there was another prospect that came up at the end of the year that we've talked a little bit about, and that's Gunnar Henderson. How does Gunnar compare? Obviously, they play different positions, but how does Gunnar compare in the grand scheme of things here to Adley? Like, where does he fall in?
Well, I watch practice more than I watch games, and I take all the information from. I think very much that Gunnar is not a third baseman, not because he's not good at it, but because he's great at shortstop. So why play him? Why put him in a position where he's a B when there's one 12 feet away where he's a true A+? I think that third base is going to be occupied by Kobe Mayo eventually, but Gunnar is the Orioles have a lot of good shortstops. It's actually starting to be kind of a problem, but Gunnar is, in my mind, the absolute best of them. I think in terms of baseball ability, making contact, running out of the box, covering their zone in defense, I think Gunnar is the best player on the team. I think he's better than Adley, and I think he's one of the best players in the league. His development hasn't exactly been rushed, but there's some lefty type things that he still needs to hammer out to get to that consistent 500 to 600 plate appearance player. But I think Gunnar is the most talented baseball player in the Orioles organization. And for once, that is really saying something, because there's a lot of dogs in there. So Gunnar, when I first started watching that rookie team in 2019, he just captured my attention, and he's kept it for years. And it's been really, really neat to watch him. He was a scrawny teenager when he first started. Now he's like man-sized, big forearms, huge hands, long home runs. So, every part of his development I've been like right there watching from extremely close, and he's just an awesome person. Extremely humble, very nice to kids, not private, will make jokes. So Gunnar, he's not going to be that captain type, but he's going to be a player that Oriole fans love for a long time, hopefully forever. He'll bring us the World Series.
I got to tell you, when you talk about Gunnar Henderson, I thought you were talking a little bit about Hogdale there.
What? What do you
Well,
mean?
they do compare similarly. So in some ways, maybe subconsciously, I kind of was.
No, I mean, that is a ringing endorsement right there.
Just an awesome guy.
So here's the third of these prospects here that listen, I know that they're littered with prospects right now, the Orioles. Right. You can trip and like land on 4 of them. But the one that I think is getting the most attention right now in spring training and the most potential Rookie of the Year hype. Actually, is Gunnar can he win Rookie of the Year, or did he go over his limit last year?
He's under his limit, so he can win it this year, and I would bet that he does.
I don't know. He's going to have some competition from his own team because you've got, and you talked a little bit about him, Grayson friggin' Rodriguez, who should have made his debut last year, got hurt. But as far as pitching prospects go, I'm not sure there's a better one in baseball right now.
Yeah, there isn't. I love Grayson. He really embraces the pitcher's role as like MC, tone setter. Like it's his stage, it's his job, and he's a true number one because of that mentality. But his stuff is lights out. When the Orioles drafted him, he was fast, curved, slide. That's it. Now his best weapon, he didn't even have it, is the changeup package. He has the tumbler and he has the slow down as it gets closer to the plate. So he's got 2 devastating all-speed pitches, really 5 ways to frustrate a hitter and to make them think. So, he really was. When he got hurt last year, guys, his next start was going to be in the major leagues. And it was a lat, the beginning of a lat injury. So really the course of action is no exercise, no running, no throwing, no stretching. You rest for 5 or 6 months. Then, if everything still feels right, then you can start doing those things very, very slowly. And for an athlete like him that's so foaming at the mouth all the time ready, it was very, very difficult for him to just do that. But he's back. I've talked to him a couple times at camp. His non-throw days, he's like a human being. His throw days, he's like a dog with rabies. You don't want to get near him on his throw days.
That's awesome.
Yesterday, he pitched against Detroit. He gave up some hard contact. It didn't fall for hits. He got a couple strikeouts. So he's right on the developmental track that they had for him when he got drafted. Now it's time for him to be on the Orioles, not on the Norfolk Tides, not in the minors. It's time for him to do it against big league hitters. I'm semi-optimistic that he's going to have a good season this year, but this year's not the concern. After this year, I think he's going to be the steady number one that the Orioles envisioned when they drafted him. Love Grayson. Absolutely love him.
Yeah, he's my favorite prospect right now for the Orioles, although it's partially I do APBA and I drafted him a couple years ago. So, he's made me feel pretty smart. That's all I'm saying.
We are smart, but we all have our reasons for why we like guys. And by the way, just a perfect opportunity to mention the Orioles have a lefty with stuff that's comparable too. I actually think that DL Hall, his stuff is more electric than Grayson's, but
really,
absolutely. I've seen him be better than Grayson, but he needs to find that command consistency that makes him a guaranteed starter, not a guy who has the bullpen option written on him. That's what his profile is right now. The organization isn't exactly sure where to put him. Some consistency, and he's a starter, and a damn good one. I'm crazy about DL Hall.
Yeah, so those are some big name. That's the reinforcements right there. That's already going to be coming up, especially on the pitching front. But Hogdale had some other questions about the big league team.
No, I was just wondering, what are your expectations for the team this year? Then you briefly mentioned earlier you expect to take a bit of a step back, but what do you think their ceiling is this year, and what do you think their floor is?
Oh, well, that's a different question. I think this is not how baseball works ever, but if every single thing works out right and nobody gets hurt and all the prospects start to demonstrate a semblance of potential, then maybe 85 to 90 wins. But it's just not realistic to expect that those circumstances to all fall in line that way. So I think the best part of the season is going to be the obvious and apparent transition from the minors to the majors for some of these prospects. We haven't mentioned Kerstead. We haven't mentioned Cowser. We haven't mentioned Westberg. We haven't mentioned Joey Ortiz. We haven't mentioned Connor Norby. So these guys are going to be showing up. I care about that so much more than I care about the win total or the winning percentage. So as long as that happens, ceiling versus floor is less important for 2023. I guess to not beat around the bush, I expect 76 to 80 wins.
Seems like a pretty reasonable bet from what you've said. But of all those guys, and it's a plethora of prospects that are coming up here that are going to have to be added to the 40-man. Which one do you think has the highest likelihood of surprising people and really showing themselves to be maybe I don't want to say an everyday player, but just a good Major League Baseball player?
I'm going to go with Norby, the second baseman, and I think he's, out of all the guys that I've talked about, if everything breaks right, he's the most time all-star, I think, because he played second base, hit tool is his strength, and power is what his hit tool is steering him towards. So at his peak, physically, I see him as a 25 home run hitting second baseman who has an on base above 330 or above 350 and an average in the 300 range. There just aren't a lot of those in baseball nowadays. There's just not that many high power offense second basemen. He is that. So, as far as upside and highest ceiling, I think Norby is going to be the most time all-star of the Orioles prospect nucleus right now.
Speaking of second baseman, what's going on with Ramon Urias right now? Not specifically his spring training or anything like that. I know he's been underperforming a little bit, but he won a Gold Glove last year, and it seems like he's not going to see. It seems like he's almost in a utility role. Is he doomed to kind of just be roving from position to position until he gets traded, or how do they see him?
That's a yes. I think yes, he is. But before, when the Orioles have so many shortstops, it's almost like a problem. This is what I mean. This is from that overlap. Yeah, he's obviously a stellar top tier defender. You want him in your lineup every at bat, every game, every inning, every opportunity. But that means sitting gunner. So, or that means never ever playing Jorge Mateo. Never. So the Orioles they're just not currently constructed where one guy gets all the reps and one guy gets none. But you're right to observe that he is being squeezed out, and it's really not by talent. It's by default. So, when you look at baseball, the ideal thing to do with a player in that situation is to figure out his value on the market and trade him or package him in a larger deal. And that took us back to what you guys mentioned before. They didn't buy free agents in the offseason, and we really didn't hit a huge trade. We traded a shortstop prospect, Darryl Hernandez, to Oakland for Cole Irvin, the number 2 starter. But let's say it's July and the Orioles are in second place or in first place in the AL East. We can take 4 prospects, whichever ones we want, trade them for Brian Reynolds. Or trade him for a starting pitcher, whoever's the hottest guy. Bieber, Flaherty, somebody like that of that caliber. So, the prospects that don't get to play or don't get to cross that major threshold with the Orioles, it's going to happen elsewhere after they're dealt.
So you don't see it as them being overtly conservative. You see it more as lying in wait for the right opportunity, and that does explain a lot of what they've done this offseason.
Ed, that is perfect phrasing. That is exactly what I see. They're going to let the prospects determine the course of action and how good they are, and when that window is fully open. And when it is, they're going to act. So, right. That's an excellent way to describe it. They didn't take the offseason off. I mean, they let Jordan Lyles walk, and they replaced him with Kyle Gibson. It's almost like same thing.
That's an upgrade. I've never been much of a Lyles fan. He always does well against the Red Sox and terrible against everyone else.
170 innings for the Orioles last year. That's what we're looking at. How available was he? So Gibson is going to be the same thing this year. Neither of them are Grayson Rodriguez. Neither of them are DL Hall or Noah Denoyer. So, it's I don't want to say like it's temporary, but when they see how good they are by proving it against other opponents, that's going to initiate the next phase of action.
So the rest of the Orioles rotation is sort of I look at two guys, and that's Dean Creamer and oh my god, I'm having a brain for Bradish, Kyle Bradish.
Yeah, I knew.
And they all had, because I've seen I like Creamer quite a bit. I think he's a good pitcher. Every report I've read is that there's going to be some regression for him this year. Now, I don't know how true or not that is, but when you look at Bradish, he had kind of a miserable first half, and then it was really excellent the second half. Do you see those two guys playing a role in once Rodriguez and Gunnar and all those guys are signed? Do you see them playing a role in the future of this team?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We need their innings. We need their stuff. So as the young guys transition up, it's not like either of them are at or near 30 years old. I think Brady had to tinker or repair or refine his delivery, and he got that maybe 2/3 through his time last year, and from then on it was smooth sailing. Kramer has to find the pitches that work and eliminate the ones that don't, so his pitch mix is a better, more presentable package. But yeah, I think they're going to be two major innings loggers for the entire part of the Orioles window. Another opportunity to mention, they were not drafted or really developed by the Orioles. Bradish came in the Dylan Bundy trade, Dean Kramer in the Manny Machado trade. So
yep. Last survivor.
Right, the last guy so long ago. But it's just a way to observe that the Orioles' plan has been in action for several seasons. You just had to sit back and wait on it. Young Kramer, young Bradish, they were now they're established starters in a major league rotation. So going from where they were to where they are says a lot about the Orioles' ability to develop.
So I got a question for you, Hogdale. Are you familiar with who the closer for the Orioles is?
Right now?
Yeah.
I could not tell you off the top of my head, not going to lie.
Okay, so
think tall.
Yeah. You can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but his nickname is the Mountain.
You are not wrong. I do not have to correct you. In Spanish,
I think he might be the most underrated relief pitcher in baseball right now. The guy that you have not heard about that is just friggin' devastating. And that's Felix Bautista, who I believe was a 28-year-old rookie, right?
Yes.
Something like that. How did they develop him?
Yeah. Oh, this guy's been in the system since before I started paying attention. Like 2015, 24. He's had 8 years in the Orioles system. And I guess since before I started paying attention, from what I heard, he was trying to get it over. He was trying to get people out with junk for 6 seasons. And it didn't exactly work. He didn't fit into a closer type of profile really until last year. But closers they don't tend to last forever. So I think it would be very wise for the Orioles to develop some advanced bullpen options just in case Felix doesn't do in 23 and beyond what he did in 2022. It's not like I'm not confident in him at all. I've met him. I've seen his warm-up sessions. They're saying that he's injured now, so his workload is significantly reduced. But he's not injured. They just want his build-up to be really, really slow, which I understand. He's a big dude. He's a really, really, really big guy. So I don't know what to expect, but I would expect a lot of leash. So if he blows 3 saves in the first month, I don't think they're switching him out. But if he blows 7 in the first 2 months or 8 in the first 2 months, there's going to be a 1A with an opportunity to take over his job. I like Felix, but closers are fickle. Maybe that's a good way to say it.
Volatile, fickle.
Right.
There's a lot. If you find that closer that can like somebody like Mariano Rivera or like Trevor Hoffman, or really those guys that just are year in, year out. Those guys are like a needle in a haystack. It is so hard to find a reliable closer.
Right.
Who would you say the 1A is?
Ooh, so far this spring, it's been, I want to say he's a minor league Rule 5 guy, Nolan Hoffman. I don't know too much about him, but I know that he was warming up today. He could have got his 3rd save. Felix is righty. The setup man is Dylan Tate, also righty. I like to have a lefty option in there, and I also like to have someone that contrasts or is different from the pitcher before him. We've got a lefty who had a sports hernia injury, who throws things. Everything he throws moves in a very funky way. That guy's name is Nick Vespi, a long-haired blonde guy. His velocity has a ceiling, but I don't even look at it. Like, if you want to see what he does to lefties, you can just Google Nick Vespi versus G-Man Choi. He had Choi going down into the dirt on one knee, just trying to follow it. So it's really, really tough on lefties. I'd say Vespi, Tate, one of those guys. They haven't emerged yet, Ed. So I guess like as the bullpen becomes more formulated, we'll find out who that person could be. Hopefully it's Felix.
Gotcha. Cool. So Hogdale, do you have any more questions for Mr. Birdland here?
I think we got everything through that we had planned.
I've got one more question for you. Actually, I've got 2. The first is, who was your favorite player growing up?
That's easy. That's Eddie Murray, the Orioles.
Oh, man.
Switch hitting, Hall of Famer. I got to meet him when I was like, I think 5 or 6 years old. I won a contest, and I got to go in the locker room in the clubhouse before the game, and everybody in Baltimore was like all crazy about Cal Ripken, and I was just like, whenever I go to a game, Eddie Murray is the one that drives in the runs. Eddie Murray is the one that everybody stands up and cheers for, and I told him that when I met him. And I remember we got pictures, and I shook his hand, and I got his autograph. And the more I watched him, the more I was like, wow, we're good because of this guy. And he just got added to the organization last week as a coach, and he just reported 2 days ago. So hopefully I'll come across him in my travels to the stadium. Eddie Murray is my favorite player by so far. Really, my 1A is David Ortiz.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who's more clutch than him? Who did better than him? Remember, the Red Sox or the Yankees were like supposed to win, and he made them not win. So
that's up.
Yeah, as an Orioles fan, I would imagine. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but as an Orioles fan, you've gone through the exact same thing with them always being at the top of the division.
We have a lot in common. It's that we our hatred of the Yankees unites us, but Poppy and I share a birthday, and he's like the most clutch player of my life. It probably should be Mike Messina, but Poppy has done better baseball things for me in my life, so it's him.
Well, I can tell you my favorite non-Red Sox player is a famous Oriole, and that's Adam Jones. So,
Okay.
like I see, I'm starting to think there's, it's not, we might be like 6 hours apart geographically, but except for when we're playing each other, same thing. Totally the same thing.
I feel that. Also, by the way, Jonesy got added to camp too. I don't know if he's officially been hired by the Orioles, but he showed up last week and he's been like tweeting that I'm talking with the owner or I'm talking with the network. So this guy like might be a broadcaster or something when the season starts.
That's
awesome.
He just seems like such a good guy from everything that I've heard about him, and just like the talent level is. I was really hoping he'd come back after Japan and finish his career up here, but wasn't in the cards.
A great, very brief Adam Jones story at Ed Smith Stadium one day, years and years and years ago. Before a game, they were doing batting practice. There was nobody there. I used to work at the stadium, so I was there early. Adam Jones was in the outfield shagging balls. I believe it was Chris Davis hitting. Chris Davis hit one, so I start running in the bleachers to get it. And Adam Jones looks up at me. I'm running, and there's no one else there, so that I don't need to run. And I fall down, and I turn around, and Adam Jones is looking at me, and he points at me and said, "You are such a loser."
Jesus. Wow.
He was not wrong. He was definitely
That's
not
brutal.
Wrong. Right.
Jesus Christ.
Just his observation. I'm not going to disagree with him. It probably looked like, yeah, this guy's a big loser.
Well, I would say this. I just after this conversation, I don't think you're a loser at all. I think this has been one of my favorite episodes, and we're really appreciative of you coming on for this.
No problem.
Ended on one last question, and you alluded to this very briefly earlier, but what is your dog's name, and what kind of a dog are they?
Oh, Scooter is a 6-year-old German Shepherd.
Let's go.
Right. He's very handsome. He's like the kind that's all black and not a lot of brown spots. His brown is on the bottom. So he really loves baseball. A lot of the players know him too. They even let me bring him to the facility every now and then.
That's awesome.
Some coaches come out and like take pictures with him. I know a bunch of players and their parents like send him gifts. So the Orioles catching prospect Creed Willems he's from Texas and he's
I love Creed Willems. He's like, we had a guy named Big Joe Davis. He's such a character of the game, Creed.
So when I met him last year, like we first bonded on dogs, and he's like, Eric, I got a good contract. Sometimes I'm with major league people. Like if something hurts, I get it taken care of. I want to eat something. People just bring it to me. It's like being away from my dog is something that nobody can make up for it. So he's like, if you don't mind, when you come back tomorrow, bring Scooter. So I did, and now they're friends. So
man,
right?
That's
Scooter
awesome.
I'm a single dude, and Scooter, like being in my life, it's almost like I have a love interest, a child, a best friend, a chore, a responsibility, and it's something that I really embrace, and I'm really happy I made the decision to have our together. Thank you for asking. From me and from you.
Yeah, no, I always ask about dogs. I've got Hogdale and I both have them. He's got Sapphire, and I've got Penny, and they're good dogs. But no, thank you again so much. Is there anything you want to plug, your podcast, or where people can follow you?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. The Florida Prospect Report. I don't know the exact Twitter handle, but my partner is Bailey. He's a college kid in Fort Myers. And one day we just got together and we decided that we see more baseball and more prospects than anyone else. So let's make a page or make a pod and let's share it with as many people as we can. And it started last year, and we've actually grown immensely, surprisingly since then. I'm an unemployed adult. He's an extremely very busy college student. So it's weird that we've been able to collaborate. But the Florida Prospect Report, if you like minor league baseball and you like prospects, we go to practices, go to camps, go to drills, go to exhibitions. So we glean as much information as we can from that, and we share it all with fans like us, all for free. So Florida Prospect Report, that's us. Thank you so much for asking.
If you're a fan of Sox prospects and that kind of content, this is a podcast for you. It's not Red Sox specific, but it's very good if you're interested in following the minors. Like there are very few podcasts of the same quality, so I will shamelessly plug that as well. But yeah, we will be back tomorrow. We've got Ian Kundal from Sox Prospects coming on, and that'll be our next one. So thanks again. Thanks so much, Eric. Thanks so much, Hogdale. We'll see you guys next time.